Paul Ruccio, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Ruccio, put some ones in the chat for this guy. He was
Hello,
standing
hello.
in an airplane hangar with a jet behind him. That's how hardcore all of the lecturers took this. This was such a serious thing for everyone. Paul, thank you so much. It's such an honor to have you tonight. Thank you for coming.
It's an honor to be here. I'm glad to be here, and miss being in person with everybody. But this is actually a great change, and it's going to be a lot of new people seeing the club, so it's good.
Yeah, we have a lot of old faces and old friends and new faces in the chat room. Real quick, everyone, if you're a non-member, you've never been to a 52 plus Joker event before, put some ones in the chat room. All members, take note, watch. These are the people who need to be part of the club. You need to tell them, explain to them, prove to them that this is a wonderful organization. And Paul, how long have you been a member?
A couple of years now. So this will be my third year being a member. I started the 2 conventions ago, not including this one. So this is going on my third year.
Fabulous. Yeah, I saw you last year at the convention. A couple of years prior, I wasn't there, sadly. But man, thank you so much for detailing what it takes to go from zero to hero with a deck of cards. I know that there are people in the chat right now that are thinking maybe they want to make their own deck of cards. And after hearing your talk, hopefully that should give them some food for thought.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the important things is, I kind of mentioned it when you go into creating a deck of cards, and you may not think about it as something that's branding, but it's you gotta focus at first of executing that deck of cards, but you gotta determine where that's going to go. If you are looking to be a brand, you got to take it to the next step and kind of stay with this theme, and make sure that it's cohesive and it's part of the image. And it doesn't have to be the deck, the theme. I use Jackson as a great example of somebody who brands himself and brands King's Wild. He does a lot of different themes, but the branding there is King's Wild and Jackson himself and the team behind Jackson. He's able to make it into more than just Federal 52 where he started. He took it other places, so that branding is you got to have a goal when you're creating a deck of cards and you're looking it to be a future brand. You got to think of it holistically rather than just a single deck.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that. So let's say there are a few people in the chat room right now that are thinking 2021's their year, they want to put out a deck of cards. What kind of advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so think about the ultimate goal of why you're putting out a deck of cards. If if you do want to do just a single deck, that's great. But if 2021 you want to create a deck of cards and create and kind of stay on the brand theme, you want to create a second deck. If you have a plan for a second, third, and fourth deck, you need to make sure that you kind of create a path to get there. It's if you're a single deck, if that's your goal, perfect. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking to create multiple decks, you really got to look at it holistically and see. You could be branding yourself. You could be doing it like you might be a magician and want to release a deck, and that deck is going to be branded based on yourself. And again, if that is your only deck, but you're going to come as a package, as a brand with that. So it's not going to be just the deck of cards. It's going to be yourself and your magic and your art, your entertainment. So you got to, if you're looking to do a deck, you got to look at, what's your ultimate goal when you're doing this? Where are you going to do it? Some people, branding aspects, Kickstarter might not be the place. You might want to, release it on your own. How you release decks and how you go about it and how you communicate it is also a big part of creating a deck of playing cards. You might start somewhere. It might be Kickstarter. It might be on your own website. It might be under somebody else's umbrella. But you gotta look at it and make sure it fits to what your goal is and what you're trying to do, and you gotta think that through. And it's really, really important.
It sounds like you've put a lot of thought into this, my friend.
Yeah. It's branding. Branding's when you look at it as a deck of playing cards, that's one thing. But when you look at it as a brand, it's there's so much that goes into it, and the communication of it, one of the things that, in my lecture, I mentioned kind of 5 points, and one of them is individual. And I'll say, like, I personally, that's something that was always a gap in how I did my branding. Not many people have ever physically seen me, heard me, or anything like that. So this is new, but it's so important with a brand. And you look at all the top brands, that's a key aspect when you look at people, even yourself, Lee. When you look at brands out there, there's a face, there's a person. Not all the time, and I feel like Jetsetter Playing Cards is an exception in the playing card community, but this is my chance to then fill that void, fill that gap that I never had as a brand with Jetsetter.
Great. Okay, so we have a question from Anne in the chat room. She asks, how can businesses use playing cards as a branding tool?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing is to make sure, if you're going to do playing cards, you need to make sure that it fits with the business and it's cohesive with the business. So, depending on what the artwork is, what the messaging is, if it is strictly just an advertising deck, you can't force it. You don't want it to just, hey, I have a business, so I'm going to create a deck of playing cards. When you think about a lot of advertising decks, sometimes that's the case. But to excel at it and to use it as a tool, it's gotta engage your customers of your business, and it's gotta fit with your messaging. And I use this is kind of a good example. Is there was recently on Kickstarter a deck of playing cards for photographers. That deck was successful because it was useful. Now it's loosely, with a brand, but it had a purpose, and it drove a message home. So it's the same thing when you have a business. You're not just putting your logo on something and putting it out there. And that's kind of why in my little video I call out, like, my tuck boxes are a lot more durable, and the purpose of it is it's good for travel. So there's a reason behind it. And when you create a deck of cards for a business, you got to add something that allows you to use it to engage your customers. It's not just something to remind them as an advertising tool. You think of Jerry Nuggets. That was a deck of cards that could be used in a casino. So there's a little tighter message there, that there's a relationship there with the deck of cards and the casino. Naturally, it goes without saying. But you got to look at that when you use it for a business. Make sure it ties into the business in some way, whether it's the artwork or materials that you use, or things like that.
Yeah, to an untrained eye, it seems like you slap a logo on it, and $180,000 later and 5,000 backers later, it's a success. But it's actually not that easy, is it?
No, and that's where, like, a lot of times, if your goal is to have I say in my case a fleet of decks, many decks, is to have it thought out and have when I think about my own decks, every series has a reason why it's an evolution of the brand. There's a purpose, and I think of it from a branding standpoint at all times. And that's why I say every decision I make, there's things I've done that doesn't see the light of day ever. But it's because it didn't work. It doesn't fit the brand. The messaging doesn't fit. The idea doesn't fit. The name doesn't fit. All that stuff. But yeah, it's one thing with branding is you got to put thought into it. Just like how you'd put thought into painting, artwork, or anything like that. You got to have a plan, and that's probably one of the biggest things. It's you can produce decks, you can release decks, but if for a long-term purpose, and it doesn't have to be. The other thing is, and this is why it doesn't have to be releasing decks of all the same theme, but the branding will be yourself, or be the company itself, and how you go about things and how you do messaging. So it's got to be well thought out.
Great. So Kelsey Little has a question from the chat room about accessories, and should accessories outweigh the deck of cards? And I don't mean actual weight, but I mean, should the accessories be way cooler than the deck of cards? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Some of them are gonna be. That's the thing is, that's if it's, to be honest, if it's the right accessory and the right item, it will be cooler than the deck of cards. It may complement the cards might complement that. And that's where, like, it depends on the accessory, and the accessory, you know, sometimes doesn't have to be like actually used with a deck of cards. And that's one of the things when I mentioned in the video. So I did a product that, which I actually have right in front of me, just to use as an example. I have a product that was made from an airplane part. Now this is a piston. I didn't produce many of them, but you know, they got out to the public, and it was essentially made to display one of the decks. And you know, all the parts are genuine aircraft parts, and it was made to display the decks.
Oh,
Has the Jetsetter logo on there.
Hold
so
it up, Paul, hold it up so we can see that.
And it's a legit aircraft part, so it fits with like the theme, the branding of Jetsetter Playing Cards. Now this may not work for any other deck of cards out there in the sense of like matching with theme. Some people will think this is really cool. Some people are not going to think, you know, they'll be like, oh, I'd rather have the deck of cards. But it depends. But the accessories can be cooler than a deck of cards. You know, people get excited about accessories. Like when you think about products like iPhones and stuff like that, sometimes people get more excited about having like earbuds than the phone itself. You take the product itself granted, but it's got to fit the theme of kind of what you're trying to do with the brand.
Great. Really great stuff, Paul. This is fantastic. I'm sure the people in the chat room that are thinking about making a deck of cards, they're taking notes feverishly. And obviously they can contact you if they have questions, right?
I'm open book, you know, social media, email. You know, I've gotten emails and contact messages in the past, and I'm an open book when it comes to, you know, if you're even looking, not even branding wise, but creating a deck of cards or just, you know, want to talk through things. I have no qualms about it. And I love helping, you know, if people have questions, because it's intimidating. Just a deck of cards alone is intimidating. And, you know, it's great to help people and get them in the community as well to participate in, you know, creating a deck of cards. It's a big deal. And it's something that, you know, sometimes you need a mentor or somebody to, you know, bounce ideas off of.
And that's actually one of the things we're going to talk about at the general meeting. I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things that we tried to do last year, and because of COVID and everything, it kind of got paused, but I'm going to reaffirm that we're going to have a designer scholarship, right? You need a mentor. This is not an easy mountain to climb. And so if you have people who have been successful and failed too, because you learn just as much from failure as you do success, to have a mentor to help you through that, you might be more successful. So we're going to, as 52 Plus Joker as an organization, is going to move forward and help with that. And so I'm glad that you agree that mentors are really the key for something like this. Oh, am I muted?
No,
oh, Paul, I think we've got you missed. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
What'd you say? I'm sorry. What were you saying?
Thank you. Yeah, so, you know, I missed, I was trying to get unmuted, but I missed what you just said.
I was just talking about the 52 Plus Joker is going to take the initiative to help young artists and designers become better playing card producers. And we're going to pair them up basically with people who can help them, like a mentorship program. And that's one of the things I'll talk about at the general meeting. I think our general meeting Saturday. You'll have to check the schedule. But that's one of the things that I will reaffirm to the club, is that we are going to do that. We're moving forward with that.
Yeah, and that's a great idea, because there's a lot of aspects to it. You know, it's not just the designing of the playing cards. It's not just running like a Kickstarter project. There's a business end too, and there's a lot of, you know, those who've gone through the process have learned a lot, and there's a wealth of knowledge. And you know, whether, you know, depending on what aspects you've been part of a deck of cards, if it's just designing, if it's actually, you know, starting up a company, there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of perspectives to get from people, because, you know, what one person does doesn't always work for another. But getting the ideas from everybody is huge. It's you know, that's a great thing.
Thank you, by the way. It's important. It's really important that people hear that. You know, like, this is the guys who are successful that we see have great success on Kickstarter. It didn't happen in a vacuum. I mean, some of it, a little bit, but for the most part, they surround themselves with smart people who help them make smart decisions. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. You just have to surround yourself with the smartest people in the room. That's how you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like how Steve Jobs says they hire the smart people so that they can tell them what to do, and not have Steve Jobs tell them, you know, what to do. When I think that was a similar quote to what he said. But yeah, and that's the thing is, there's a great community out there, and everybody's willing to help. If somebody does approach any of us, and I can't speak for everybody, but I know from the community that when people have questions, the community is there to help, and it just makes the community stronger to have more people involved. That whether it's producing a deck, being part of somebody else's deck, or also purchasing. If you have questions about the process, like I've had customers ask me about the process. I'm very transparent because it's important to understand what it takes to create a deck, create a brand. The processes behind it. It's a lot. I'm luckily enough that I can do this, because full-time commitments and stuff like that. But it makes it very difficult, and there's a lot that goes into it. So any guidance that people get, it's very, very useful.
Right. You're going to save them years, right? Years of doing it wrong.
Yeah, because there's mistakes that happen. A lot of mistakes happen. So it's, and some, people don't see, some people see, and it's knowing, where to mitigate any of those risks and issues that could arise.
Can we get some ones in the chat for this guy? This guy is extolling knowledge on us. This is great. Like he's dropping gems. Throw some ones. There we go. This is for you, Paul. I hope you can see that right now. Yeah, also, while you guys are dropping ones, if you have any questions, now's the time. We have about, I'd say about 15, 20 more minutes. So if you want to ask Paul some questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat and we'll ask them. So while we're waiting for questions, Paul, let me ask you a question. You just came out, was it please remind me, what number Kickstarter campaign was this last campaign?
This was Kickstarter number 5. So deck number 7 and 8 came out of this Kickstarter.
And this was the terminal teal version, correct? Yeah.
So this prototype right here, it's not the finished product. I'm very excited for the finished product to be coming in. But this is kind of this is the lounge edition terminal teal, which follows the premier edition that led it ahead of it. So kind of one of the things, just to talk about branding and kind of my train of thought with things of why it goes in a certain direction. It's hard to see. There's this sheen here, so on the camera you're not going to see it that well. But so one of the things when I think about my first deck, I had no idea what I was doing in the sense of branding or anything like that. So what I did with the premier edition to help develop the brand, I made sure it said Jetsetter Playing Cards. I defined it as luxury brand and quality decks, and there was a purpose for this. There's a long-term plan, and so then one of the goals is to evolve and kind of strip a lot of that text away. Where you don't have to read Jetsetter Playing Cards anymore. You'll acknowledge that this is Jetsetter Playing Cards based on just a logo. And that was kind of the goal, was to get to a point where I don't have to have it say Jetsetter Playing Cards or have it say Jetsetter or anything like that. It'll be based on a logo. And that's why, even the back design, I changed it up a bit to then incorporate the logo with the pattern on the back design. But there was a purpose for that. There was a branding purpose behind that, of why I was doing that and the direction I wanted to go and become, that key thing on my first point in my video is, identity. And be able to be, recognized without having to, like literally say Jetsetter Playing Cards. Kind of the goal there.
Okay. So we got questions coming in for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What do you think about decks like the Fontaine deck? They come with the name Hype, right? It's the Hype decks. That's what, like a name that they put on modern decks. How do you feel about Hype decks?
So from a branding standpoint, some of them make sense when you think about like Fontaine decks. That's a brand. When you think about it, Zach is an individual that was the brand before like the Fontaine decks. So essentially, the deck of playing cards became an accessory of him, and that's the thing is it's a hype deck if that's what you want to call it, but it's an accessory of Zach. And that's what Zach is the brand, and Fontaine has become an extension of Zach. And that's what, when you think about branding, you think about how, companies take their approaches. That's what I look at when I think of fontaines and decks similar to that, it depends on which deck it is the branding might not be the deck. It's a hype deck, but it's following a higher purpose of, you know, somebody else that's behind it.
So you're saying the deck is then an accessory?
Correct. Correct. That's how I would look at that. And it evolves. Like Zach's been doing fontaines for a while now, and it's evolved. He's partnered with other brands, which is in my eyes, you know, like in a successful thing. When you can partner with another successful brand, you find an alignment, you find a common theme across them, and it's another aspect of branding. And that's why, you know, things like that I love. And you look at it, and you know some people may knock it, some people, you know, they don't knock it, and they inspired, you know, to look at it, and they're inspired of what's been happening. And I look at it as, you know, great branding, but it didn't start with the deck of playing cards. It started with Zach himself.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Very important to know. And and you got to, you know, something that needs to be acknowledged in those cases, that the deck of cards end up being an accessory of Zach.
Okay, wonderful answer, by the way. We have someone in the chat room, Lauren, is asking, can you explain why failing is completely okay and part of the game?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Failing, it gives you an opportunity to grow and look at, you know, what went wrong. Also ask others what went wrong, because, you know, sometimes you might not be able to figure it out yourself. You know, I had a failed Kickstarter campaign, you know, before everything, and it gave me a chance to sit back and say, you know, what did I do wrong? What was my approach? And, you know, the conversations I had after that within the community helped me get to a point where I can at least take off a little lighter than what I was trying to do previously. But failing in any aspect, you know, and being able to get back up, you know, when you do something wrong, you might succeed, but there's going to be aspects that you might fail at and still succeed. And you got to, even though when you succeed, you need to look at areas and how you can improve. And that's, you know, I've made mistakes with branding. I've made mistakes on like how I take photos. I'm like, well, that didn't look good. That didn't fit the brand. But I didn't realize it until I put it out there. And when I looked at it myself, or, you know, didn't get good responses, I was able to pivot and do something different and try, you know, the next step. But it's very important to fail. It's
right now they're saying in the chat
opportunity.
room, they're all reminiscing about your first Kickstarter campaign and how it wasn't as successful as all the other campaigns you've done. So obviously you learned a great deal on that first campaign.
Oh yeah, hands down. And it's one of those things that, you know, kind of go back I had a first one that totally failed, didn't fund. Then I had the next one that funded, but it was successful, but it doesn't mean there wasn't learning opportunities. And every time I release a deck, every time I have a conversation, I look at ways that I can improve my conversations. And one of the things that I actually talked with Tyler and Steve about is I do this prototype invitational before every deck I release. It's not about sending out prototypes. It's about the kind of the feedback, the fearless feedback that is enabled in the group. And Lee, and you're part of the latest one, and there's a lot of chatter, and it's not just about the decks. It's like I'll put stuff out there that, hey, what do you guys think? I might love the idea. The group might not like the idea, and it gives a good heartbeat. But it's you know, being able to continuously improve and look at what you're doing and look at what you've done and what you will do is really big parts of the process.
Absolutely. I'm part of that group, and my phone rings 17 times a second, man. It doesn't stop.
Yeah, it can get crazy. This is and that's a big group. It's usually like 10 or 12 people. This year it was hard to cut it down to 10, so it ended up being about 30. So
no, I love being part of it. I don't get to answer all the time because I got other stuff, but I do look every day. I do check out what's happening, and it's incredibly interesting. It's like you're crowdsourcing like ideas and you're feedbacking, and it's like a mastermind group. It's wonderful.
It's been great, and every year it's been like that. And you know, and that's important to sometimes as a brand and as a company, you got to take different approaches of how you do things. And you know, one of the things is I'll put things out there publicly, and, you know, see how the reactions are. And then there's times I'll, you know, within the group or, you know, other groups, just individuals, you know, bounce an idea off of. But that's, you know, kind of that part of like also failing is, you know, trying to be ahead of failing as well, as, you know, getting the feedback and understanding of what you're doing and what you're looking to do. And I may think something sounds right or looks right, or a design might look right to me, but, you know, somebody else will have a different perspective. And that's what's important with my brand is I'm very into aviation and planes, and certain things make sense to me, but somebody that, you know, might not be as involved in aviation or travel or anything like that, maybe never flown on a plane, might not get some of the things. But so if put that in front of them, if they have feedback that, you know, oh, maybe I have to think about this different or communicate it different. So yeah, it's all part of it.
All right, I have another question in the chat room. It's a good question from Lee Donaldson. Anyone named Lee is cool, by the way. I'm just putting it out there. Just saying. He asks,
absolutely.
Will you be branding more apparel, hats, tees, hoodies?
Yeah, it's part of the long-term plan. So I've been trying to test hats and jackets and hoodies and sweatshirts and other t-shirts. It's always part of the plan, and it's one of those things that I try to test things out myself. And that's the important thing is, like, whenever there's new products, I'll test things myself, and then I try to get some of the products out there to get kind of an idea of what people think, if they like it. Like one of the things is, you know, aside from apparel, I did a clock, and the clock was made from an aircraft piston as well. But the thing is I had a hard time. There's a couple of them out there in the public, but I had a hard time releasing it because I was like, I don't know if this is the right price point for people, and I had to think about that. You know, it's something that's a little on the pricier side, and I didn't think for my brand and my customers, I don't want to say they weren't ready for it yet, but they weren't ready for it yet. And I even, you know, to be honest, at this point, I don't even have one for myself, because I want to make sure that it's something that if my customers are going to want, it's something because, like, I think it's right as well. I'm not going to put something out there that I can see me buying myself if it was somebody else running Jetsetter Playing Cards. And so there's things I need to do to figure out, and that apparel is a big thing, is making sure I get the right one. It fits, you know, right. It goes with the brand. So like, I have a jacket that I'm testing that's more like a bomber jacket. I don't want to do just any jacket. I want to do something that kind of has that aviation like feel and theme to it. Whether you're somebody that would pilot a plane or if you were somebody that was traveling, it's important, because again, it's something like this is the Jetsetter Playing Cards is a very personal like project and company for me, that the decisions I make are the right decisions. Like this hat I'm wearing, I've been, you know, there's times I would do a test product, and I used to travel every week for like 7 years. I was traveling every week, and I would bring things with me to test them out and see, you know, how would this go when I travel? How, like, just put it literally through everyday life. And yeah, so to answer the question, apparel is on the roadmap, and it should be coming in the near future.
Great. Let's put some ones in the chat for this guy. He is sharing his time, his thoughts, his knowledge. He deserves your love. Please put some ones in that chat room for Paul Ruccio. There we go. There we go. That's all for you, Paul. That's all for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do we have any other questions? We're coming in. We're coming in for a landing here. You see what I did there? We have time for maybe one or two more questions. So if you have one or two more questions for Paul, please put it in the chat room. And oh yes, that's it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Slightly Charred asked the question earlier, and I meant to ask it, and it's a very good question. You print with Expert Playing Card Company. Can you just quickly tell us why you chose Expert over, let's say, Cardamundi or United States Playing Card Company?
Yeah, so it comes down to, you know, one of the things I mentioned is my personal requirements with the deck of cards. There's certain key aspects that are really important to me, and it's not just the cards, it's the tuck box, and what Expert can do. Expert, when I started doing the Premier Edition, really understood what I wanted to do, and that's really important. Not to say the others didn't, but Bill Pollution Expert has been a great resource for me, and you know, every deck I've produced, you know, my standards have been, you know, their standards, which is very key. Consistency is very important. And you know, I love that Bill and Thea and the team over there just acknowledges that, and they understand my requirements, and that goes long ways for me, because when branding, you know, it's not just the image but also the quality of the product. Being consistent is so important, and you know, even take my voice out of it. Customers have always said, you know, how consistent from, you know, my blue deck that I did years ago versus the green deck, which I just did, is consistently on par with each other. So it's a critical thing on my part, and Expert does a great job. And you know, every time I release a deck under, you know, kind of having Expert print it, I'm always honored to have their name on my tuck box. So and it's nothing against, you know, the other companies. It's a relationship that works. And it's a big part of it, and they deliver exactly kind of what I would want in my own hands. So that's
well, there
important.
you go.
And
Golden stamp of approval from Paul Ruccio. So Paul, really quickly, if someone wants to buy some Jetsetter playing cards or any of the accessories, how do they do that?
JetsetterPlayingCards.com is the place to go. So it's I have all the Premier Edition decks there. Accessories, we currently are actually sold out, but we will be adding things over the next 12 months or so to the website, and doing some pre-orders of stuff that we're looking forward to releasing. That kind of goes with the branding theme of standalone logo by itself, no longer with the retro logo. So it's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to releasing new items.
Great, man. Thank you so much for coming, for putting together your presentation. Really quickly, that was a real jet behind you, wasn't it? That wasn't a green screen or anything.
100%. It was a real aircraft hangar, no green screen. The funny thing is, when I was looking at the camera and we were doing test runs, I even said to myself, wow, that looks photoshopped. But if anybody doesn't believe me or wants some proof, I have some behind the scenes photos. So, but no, and that's the key thing there is, it's a genuine passion of mine. And so, you know, I kind of mentioned in the video, a lifestyle, and not that I'm on private jets, just more of a lifestyle of the theme. I'm a diehard aviation travel nut, so it fits, and that's one of the biggest things I try to, you know, describe Jetsetter Playing Cards is it's genuine. It's not something that I just created to create. It's a legitimate passion of mine, and that's one thing I wanted to kind of, when you invited me to the convention this year, I wanted to kind of show that is, and it's legit. And the Jetsetter Playing Cards is, I look at it as my own lifestyle, in the sense of like how much I love playing cards and aviation and travel. So I wanted that to show through the video.
Well, it does, and you are legit. And we thank you so much for coming, for putting the energy and effort into what you've just shared with us. Everyone, give this man some love. Throw some ones in the room. Paul Ruccio, it was an honor and a pleasure. Thank you again. If people want to get a hold of you, they can reach out to you through JetsetterPlayingCards.com. And
yep.
Last thoughts, 60 seconds.
No, I appreciate being here, and thank you everybody that's here and everybody that will watch after the fact if you didn't make it during this time slot. If you ever have any questions, reach out to me, Instagram, Facebook, any of those. I'm willing to, you know, help, and you know, I love this community, and it's been great. So I'm looking forward to the next convention to you know, see some new faces next year. So make sure you start saving those pennies and planning your travel to Niagara Falls.
Great. Thank you again, Paul. Everyone, round of applause. Ones, Paul Ruccio.
Thank you.
Okay.
Glad to be here.
Thank you again, Paul. Our next